Minneapolis isn't like the rest of the world. We take this stuff seriously, and we're not going to put up with it.
I spent a week in my old hometown of Minneapolis covering the response to the federal immigration crackdown known as Operation Metro Surge. I got tear-gassed an hour and a half after, and just a block from where Alex Jeffrey Preddy was killed by federal officers.
Very difficult situation to watch. I was hit by a projectile
fired by the officers. But I found my old city strongly united against what Minnesota elected officials are calling federal overreach.
What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state?
And I found strong leadership in the Native community that has been standing up against federal headwinds for centuries.
What we're really seeing is a continuation of tactics that us as Native people are very accustomed to. But what is happening now that is different is more American citizens are waking up to the reality of what it means to be existing under an authoritarian regime that us as Native people already know and understand and have been fighting against for generations.
And Minnesotans seem to be paying attention. An enormous rally through the streets of the city ended with speeches at the Target Center Arena led by Native voices, but not before the singing of the American Indian Movement anthem. AIM was founded in Minneapolis in 1968.
All of you today are now feeling what we have been feeling for centuries. This did not begin in December with Operation Metro Surge. This began centuries ago.
Other Native leaders agreed.
It's a repeat of history, and it's very unfortunate we're in 2026 and we're seeing this happening again today to our Native people.
But maybe things can be different now in Minnesota.
Minneapolis isn't like the rest of the world. We take this stuff seriously, and we're not going to put up with it.
What a lot of Americans are really shocked by, and a lot of the world is really shocked by, is how the United States is treating its own citizens, to say nothing of how it treats people it sees as different, such as immigrant people, or people such as ourselves who they've cast out of, belonging to this nation from the very beginning and tried to actually erase us from this land.
It's unclear what the Trump administration plans to do with its immigration enforcement plan.
Well, I'm looking at that whole situation.
But Native leaders say they will continue to stand up.
It reminds me of what our ancestors taught us, not just as Navajo ancestors, but Indian country ancestors. We all are supposed to be here for one another. And that's one of the things that I continuously say to everybody and anybody that will listen to me. If Indian country unites, we are strong. And that is what the United States government fears.
On unceded Dakota land in what is now Minnesota, I'm Stewart Huntington for ICT.
Here in the urban area, Natives know what's Fort Snelling. We call it Badote. We know that this place is important. We know that the spirits are still there. You can feel their presence when you're there. Not, the 1,700 women, children, and elders who were at that concentration camp. The hundreds who died, their spirits still come back to that space.
Just over a mile from the Bishop Whipple building, where federal immigration detainees are being held outside of Minneapolis, is a crucial site in one of the Dakota people's creation stories. But in the 1860s, that site was also transformed into a site of genocide, as the United States imprisoned upwards of 2,000 Dakota and Ho-Chunk people following the Dakota Indian Wars in a concentration camp called Fort Snelling. Given the site's unique history, Dakota people and historians are warning of the potential for history to repeat itself.
And we know that history is a series of patterns. We as Dakota people know what this site has stood for since time began. We also know what it represents to the American government. And in terms of the United States government, this is seen as a space to take control and to invade. It's right underneath the recreated military fort, because it's not even historic. It's a recreated fort today. Right underneath that is an area that was a concentration camp. Many were killed. Women were used as target practice there. My own grandfather, my grandmother's great-grandfather, Cloudman Makpiowi Chashta, died at that concentration camp. You know, we grew up hearing the stories of our grandparents having to carry their papers with them, or our great-grandparents having to carry papers of identification papers with them, not being able to leave and all of this. And that's where we're at again. We're living in a state of fear right now. Anybody who is non-white is threatened with being detained. We have to carry our papers on us. I had to get all of my kids' tribal IDs and had to find our passports and any sort of identification that we have. And so I'm incredibly fearful for my children and my husband, who are browner than me. Our grandparents were murdered there. We're in prison there. And now we're worried about our family members being imprisoned there again. This is a space that's so important for us. This is a place of love and of beauty and our very makeup of who we are as humans. And it's a very difficult space to go to as Dakota people because it's very heavy. But it's a space that we've been working to be able to return to because it's our site of creation. It's a place that is so incredibly important to us, and yet it's hard to be there.
For a Dakota person or a Native person in general to be kept at Fort Snelling would be especially traumatic, right?
Absolutely. Just even knowing that there is a so-called detention center, just knowing that there are concentration camps that are being recreated again at this place is incredibly triggering, incredibly traumatic for our people. At the same time, it feels like we're being hunted. You know, the immigrants who are being detained within that space, those are our neighbors. Those are our relatives. Those are Minnesotans today. At the end of the day, we're human beings. We're trying to figure out how to live amongst each other. And to see so many people hurting at this place that is so important, so beautiful, full of spirits and love is just wrong.
For ICT, I'm Amelia Schaefer.
Wait a second.
With crime rates soaring, lawmakers voted for mercy.
Thank you for doing this. The interview, saw the film last night. Very intense. Yes, very powerful. My head was spinning. The character, though, you have, though, it goes from suspicious to save the day, helpful, to pretty much under fire. It's a very meaty role. Is that what attracted you to doing this?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, it was the script that attracted me, what it was based on. And from the opening page, I'm like, okay, what is this? What is going on here? We kind of get dropped right in the middle of this entire thing without any backstory. But my specific character, you don't really know what angle she's coming from at first. You know, she's a partner, you know, this whole scenario is happening, but there's so many layers. She's faced with so many different decisions to make, and you really don't know from where she's making these decisions from. First, you think, oh, that's the partner. I mean, of course. But, you know, she tells him straight out, like, listen, I got to kind of do my job. So it was very, very attractive, especially getting all the way to the end and kind of going, oh, okay, now I see she had to make these decisions. It was very attractive to actually work off of the baseline that they had for her, too. And I love creating backstories. And they gave me such a great character to work with, my own backstory, especially being Chris's partner, but not sharing the same space physically. You know, we had to just communicate, just like in the movie, like for real, just over screens and over audio. So I had to really build my backstory of this very layered character. Me and Chris discussed our backstory, so we understood where we were communicating, how we were communicating, and what my character was willing to do to help Chris try to solve this entire 90-minute fiasco.
And a lot of you had a helmet on and a big suit, and oh my gosh, that chopper. What is it called in there? Is it a
quadcopter?
Quadcopter. Was that an AI thing, or was it a real thing you were sitting in and they, I don't know, did the CGI with it?
Yeah, it was a real LAPD motorcycle that they made into the quadcopter, and that was on like a lift and everything else. So I was really on that thing.
You were
yeah,
it was really cool.
Super fun. I am still trying to get it home. But no, that was really fun, and it gave me the sense, especially being in the volume stage where we shot it. We have, it's a 360 from the ceilings to the walls of, downtown LA, of me flying through these different places. And the way the technology is that we use to even film this it seemed real. It seemed like I was on a ride. I selfishly was like, can we do another take? But it was actually fun, especially with having a background in riding motorcycles. So I felt right at home sitting on that thing. I spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah, that was really cool. So there's so many parallels, particularly the past few weeks, with the way that that you guys were getting the information from body cams and door cams and TikTok and Instagram. And just the speed and the fast, but I know it's said in the near future, but that's really been so relevant, particularly in the past few weeks. I think everyone feels that justice should be speeded up, but then the film shows mistakes can be made and it's hard to be thorough. So what are your feelings on that?
I believe there's something that's such a convoluted question, but such a good question, because, you ask yourself, well, would you want to be in front of an AI judge? And I think the fact that when it comes to different people not having the resources, the funds to represent themselves, to have all the information in mercy, you're provided with every single tool that the AI judge Maddox has she has you guilty. You have everything you need to prove yourself innocent. So in our real world, if there was a system that was based to give everybody the tools to help themselves if they were ever in that predicament, I feel as though that could be helpful. And also there are some human biases that I think we need to hold on to, but also could be, I've seen in real time, can hinder a decision by an actual judge. Say a judge, comes across somebody that they just had a bad day. They really don't want to be there. They get reminded, they're human. They get reminded of a case they had 5 years ago. It reminds them, so they have this bias. Something like that, I feel as though can be very helpful. And at which the speed as well, because things get prolonged, judges get sick, things happen. So there's a lot of years and years. And especially when there's
money.
Yeah, it's so much money. Especially for the victims in these different circumstances where justice needs to be served. Something like that could definitely be helpful. Do I think it should just be AI? No. Do I think it's just be humans? No. Happy balance would be ideal. But remember, AI, all these machines are man-made, so there are mistakes that are being made as well. And AI is learning from us, you know what I mean? So kind of to put that a good example so it can kind of learn from us. But I believe it could be beneficial. Too much of one thing or too much dependence on one thing also is not that great. I think we need to find a happy medium.
Chi eskalingwat. Chi eskalingwat. I'm happy-minded. I'm happy-minded. Chi eskalingwat. Chi eskalingwat. I'm happy-minded. I'm happy-minded.
AI in Indigenous communities was at the forefront in North America's largest Indigenous tech conference. In a world of generative AI used to write better emails or generate funny photos, Indigenous Tech Conference gathered in Vancouver, British Columbia to discuss how AI can be used to create true impact in Indigenous communities.
We don't need more widgets in the world. I've been doing technology for longer than I care to admit as a startup founder and building platforms and such. And so, technology needs to be pointed towards the challenges of our time.
And some of those challenges are data sovereignty and language revitalization. According to UNESCO, at least 40% of the 7,000 languages estimated to be spoken in the world are in danger, and a language disappears every 2 weeks on average. Michael Running Wolf is a co-founder and architect of First Nation Languages AI Reality, an initiative that uses AI to support Indigenous communities and language revitalization and preservation efforts. While many indigenous languages have ongoing revitalization efforts, there are languages who have little to no speakers left, making large data collection unrealistic. FLAIR's aim is to reduce the number of data requirements required to build automatic speak recognition for various indigenous languages. He says that AI can be used to create an immersive environment to enhance language learning.
You have this dynamic of even if there is funding, there is very few speakers in which to practice. And so while every tribe is committed to revitalizing and reclaiming their languages, often there's some practical barriers of, you just don't have access to teachers. And so, for instance, you go to class or you go to an immersion camp, but what happens when you go home? You're, watching Wheel of Fortune or, watching TV or YouTube. And that's all in English or a dominant language. And so what AI can do is give you a tool. And so part of my research is we're building a mobile application, chatbot, also long-term trying to build offline edge AI devices where you can go home and practice. Like what if you could go home and, turn your lights off in La Street Seat or Dakota or Dene. And that's where AI can be useful. So it can make your language ambient to your overall, ambient to your home.
While FLAIR works to reduce the data required to build automatic speech recognition for languages, other ASR and large language models still require vast amounts of data which Running Wolf says was unethically gathered.
These LLMs have been built using stolen data, all our data, your data, my data, all of your listeners and viewers. The entirety of the internet has been scraped to create these large language models. And so and they never asked our permission. We don't enjoy the benefit of the financial benefit of these systems. And furthermore, the creation of these large language models has resulted in poisoning of the internet for future language models. AI doesn't like it if you feed it its own data. These large language model developers have a problem in that the internet is poisoned, that it's hard to tell if content, text, video, whatever is actually created by humans, because that's the best kind of data. And so now this puts a premium upon natural, organic, human data. And what is the largest treasure trove of uninfected data, unpoisoned by AI? Indigenous data.
Running Wolf equated data to land, and you wouldn't give away parts of your grandmother's land for free.
We are now in the era where our data is one of the last few reservoirs and so we should obviously treat it like land. You wouldn't give away an acre of your grandmother's land to someone for free. Similarly with our data, if we treat it as a policy framework, as the equivalent of land, then we need to be very careful about it and guarded with it.
There needs to be, we need to have more of an accurate depiction of who Indigenous people are and have digital, our own digital sovereignty.
There are currently no federal or tribal policies that protect and guarantee the data sovereignty of Indigenous peoples.
We don't have strong intellectual property rights protection and data sovereignty protection currently. But what if tribes got together and created a co-op, like a data trust, a legal entity whose duty was to protect the data? The ultimate state where we have good protection of our own data is if we have strong tribal policy and strong agency over our data. And the strongest thing we can do is actually be the researchers ourselves, like have a Lakota tribal research group working on their own data, creating their own research, or Dene or Pueblo, Zuni. If the own community had their own members who were taught not only artificial intelligence and research, but also embedded with their own culture, I think that would be the most safest we could be.
For ICT, Daniel Herrera Carvajal.
Upchidge. Upchidge. I'll see you again. Upch means again. Upchidge is I'll see you again, because there is no such thing as goodbye in the Passamaquoddy language.
It's very nerve-wracking at the start. We could all crash and we could all go through smoothly. But when they wave the green flag, all the pain, all the anxiety, nervous, everything just drops. My name's Hunter Vanzile, and I drive a Pro Spec for Championship Off-Road. This one is the Forest County Potawatomi Cup. We're all as a family, we're all communities coming together and enjoying the racetrack. That's Forest County Potawatomi. My dad let me race short course karts about 9 years ago. He supports me more than anything. It's just, he's my backbone. He's taught me everything he knows, and I've learned from that. We kind of had that bond and two heads at it, and we knew what we needed to do to be involved in racing. He'll tell me like to do this, and then I'll say, no, let me do this. And there's just, he knows a little bit more than I do, and I know a little bit more than him. We work our way through it. My first ever race, my dad was my spotter. I had no idea what I was doing out there, but we got lucky and got a third. As soon as I got up on the podium, I knew, I was like, all right, this is exactly what I want to do. The rest of my life is do this. Back then it was just a family thing. And now we have sponsors, the community, my family, friends, everyone's there with me now. After I won in Bark River, the tribe, Forest County Potawatomi, and the whole community seen it, and that really exposed me out there. I got my name out there, and I was the first ever Native American to do it. That caught a lot of people's attention. That's when I felt like the community was right with me the whole entire time. Yeah, I try to give back as much as I can. I would love to work with the tribe. I usually bring my truck up to the rec center to show the kids like what it's all about. Yeah, they always want to get in and touch every button in there and just slam the gas is what they want to do. Anyone is willing to help if you ask. I might not know the guy, but if I ask, hey, can I get a hand with this on my shock setup? I mean, they're willing to help. There's been times where I broke parts and I needed help. Yeah, there's always people that are willing to help us get there. I got a lot of friends that are support us. Sponsors is a big thing. I mean, Forest County Potawatomi has been there since I've started. I have a lot of family supporting me, a lot of friends that will support me. I have my dad helping me, my mom's there to cook and keep us fed and everything, and my sisters are there for the entertainment. Every single one of them keeps me happy. Even if I travel out far, Grandin's my hometown. This whole community is all there with me.
The fashion show is our second annual this year at Hocokata Ti. Our theme was Tate, the wind guides us. So we focused on celebrating artists that reflected that Dakota belief, the wind carries our guidance and our strength, and bringing that into fashion. It's really fun for us. I think that's something we focused on, is bringing in people that have that experience, but also bringing in people that make stuff for their friends, for their family, for their communities, and showing them, you're not just a regalia maker, you're an artist, and bridging that connection with other artists too, because Leah or Jessica Haynes may not have thought of themselves as a fashion designer, but they are. They make the most amazing wearable art that we use at the most important times of our lives too, as Native people. His hat and boot dance, I think that's such a cool thing about the Oglala and a lot of Lakota cultures in South Dakota is that cowboy influence. So that hat and boot dance to start the show for him was really, really cool.
We are the Dakota people. We are proud of who we are, where we come from. And on a larger scale, we come from the Ocheti Shakoi people. The Dakota, the Lakota, the Nakota nations of this land.
100% of the ticket cost, which was we felt a nominal $10, was donated to Native nonprofits in the Twin Cities area, and the SMSC graciously matched that amount. Really excited to share it and to grow and to keep growing the show and see how we can keep it on the scale of fashion shows around the world, but also really rooted in who we are as Dakota people too and for our community.
From the Shakopee Madawakanton Sioux community in Minnesota, I'm Shirley Snavy for ICT.